The prehistoric ocean was thalassophobia on steroid. I'm kind of interested in this one. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You know what? Let's watch this one. I'm kind of interested in like what kind of nightmare that was. I already have thalassophobia, like genuinely. Um, the ocean just is like a terrifying thought to me. I always think like I've had nightmare many times before of like I guess I was on a ship or something and sunk, and suddenly it's just like what it's doing to day or night. I find it both terrifying. You're just like floating, trying to not drown, and you have no idea what's under you. And obviously the worst that it can be is like, you know, an orca or like a fucking shark, which is already pretty bad. But the just vastness and darkness of the ocean, I don't know, has always scared me. Yeah. It's a baby pool compared to this, yeah. I mean, same thing with the land, right? I mean, there's no Tyranno and anything going on around. So yeah, let's watch this. By Extinct Zoo, this prehistoric ocean was thalassophobia on steroids.
Fish.
Oh, misclick.
For many good reasons, you are probably much more willing to be dropped into the middle of nowhere on land, rather than in the ocean or sea.
Yes.
After all, it does appear that once you venture into the depths, life starts to become more disturbing. And this seems to be a common trend throughout history, as every point in time often has an animal or two lurking around in the waters that was far scarier than anything found on land. One documentary that nicely sums this up is Sea Monsters, which made a list of the top 10 deadliest seas or oceans of all time.
I see.
Among those mentioned included Jurassic waters home to giant pliosaurs, pre-Mesozoic oceans filled with giant cephalopods and sea scorpions, and even a Cenozoic sea that was home to the largest shark of all time.
The Megalodon or whatever. I mean, what do I know? I know like these days there's still some absolutely massive thing, but like there's a giant squid these days still that can be like 50 meters or something. Do I think, if I'm not wrong, none of them has ever been photographed, but we know they exist like in the depths. Then obviously there's like, you know, massive whales and orca, stuff like that. And then there's like, you know, there's smaller fish, but they still look terrifying. You know, like the anglerfish and like stuff like that. They look terrifying, but they're small in comparison. So I guess those are the really scary stuff of the ocean these days, and most sharks, right? Megalodon, as movies made, yeah. I remember like when I was young, like there was probably some movie, not Jaws or anything, but some movies about Megalodon. Like it was literally a shark bigger than a ship or something. And I remember like that was probably like one of the movie that gave me a bit more thalassophobia when I was young. I have no idea what the movie was called, but yeah, it might have been just called Megalodon. Yeah, it is surely extant. Yeah, for sure.
All this paled in comparison to their winner. A body of water that existed during the late Cretaceous that was home to numerous animals that would put much of the marine predators of today to shame.
Okay.
Some of these beasts were included in the documentary, yet many didn't make the cut, despite definitely being worthy of tingling your thalassophobia, and adding more reason as to why this body of water was absolutely the worst place to go swimming ever.
Yeah.
Welcome, my friends, to the Western Interior Seaway, or as some people like to call it, Hell's Aquarium.
Hell's Aquarium.
While you may have never heard of this prehistoric shallow ocean or inland sea, there is a fair chance you've walked across it, or at least what's left of it if you live in the United States, Mexico, or Canada. Because when it was filled with water, it split these countries across,
I see.
basically drawing a line through most of North America. And in the process, it created two island continents that no longer exist. Laramidia, which lay to the west, and Appalachia, that stood to the east. This state of existence persisted
Isn't Appalachia still a thing today? I feel like I've heard the name.
Roughly 34 million years, from the early Cretaceous 100 million years ago, all the way to the earliest Paleocene epoch 66 million years ago. Throughout this time, sea monsters could be found at every point, but some periods were unarguably worse than others, with the Western Interior Seaway having reached its climax and peak nopeness during the Campanian age of the late Cretaceous, spanning between 83.6 and 72.1 million years ago. At the time, the seaway was warm and tropical in nature while spanning 600 miles or 970 kilometers at its widest point, and measuring over 2,000 miles or 3,200 kilometers long.
That's a lot.
Additionally, it was remarkably shallow for its size, possibly only being 900 meters or 3,000 feet deep at its deepest point, compared to its presumed average depth of around 50 meters or 150 feet. Yet despite its smallish size, the Western Interior Seaway still managed to cram in a ridiculous amount of nightmarish predators, that were routinely larger or scarier than any of the predatory dinosaurs seen on land. By far the most famous of these aquatic monsters, and likely the worst to swim into, were the mosasaurs. This was an extinct group of aquatic reptiles that could grow to massive sizes, and were characterized by body shapes similar to that of monitor lizards. However, unlike their modern-day relatives, mosasaurs had 4 paddle-like flippers instead of limbs, and their bodies were elongated and streamlined for maximum drag reduction. Depending on how advanced the said species was, these guys would have also swam like an eel in an undulating fashion, or as in later developed mosasaurs, like a shark, as they had larger tail flukes that they used to propel themselves with surprising speed. These powerful swimmers completely dominated the western interior seaway, often being the biggest predators and sporting highly specialized teeth that were typically large, sharp, and sometimes serrated. Their success ultimately resulted in them enjoying a high level of diversification that they didn't experience anywhere else, as over 10 genera are known to have coexisted all at once, ranging from 2 meters or 6.5 feet to possibly 18 meters or 59 feet in length. But despite their diversity, chances are you'd only be attacked by 3 kinds: the Platycarpus, Clydastes, and Tylosaurus, as together they represent the most abundant mosasaurs in this environment, with most specimens from this time being attributed to them. Of the trio, the smallest was Clydastes, who was still by no means tiny, with certain specimens growing up to 6.2 meters or 20 feet in length, which is similar to the length of the largest recorded great whites, although it was much more narrow, which came with its own advantages as it allowed it to be an extremely agile hunter. It used its smooth teeth to catch a variety of fish and invertebrates within the shallowest parts of the seaway. While it wasn't designed to be a threat to human-sized animals per se, this mosasaur was still capable of a nasty bite, and may have even been able to travel for some time into fresh water, making it that much harder to avoid. Things start to further ramp up when moving on to the Platycarpus, as this abundant mosasaur was a tad bit bigger, with certain individuals measuring 24 feet or 7 meters from head to tail, while weighing about 1 ton.
This look a bit smaller than the other one,
giant Nile crocs, Africa's current largest predator.
I've seen this video actually. Yeah. This croc is I think he's a man-eater or something, like literally a confirmed man-eater, but he's so old. And they're just, letting him live and just do his thing and, be legendary, I guess.
Close to the weight of giant Nile crocs, Africa's current largest predator. At this size, the Platycarpus should hopefully raise your thalassophobia more than Clydastes, and yet ironically, it likely wasn't a huge threat to aquatic megafauna, since studies on its teeth have found them to have been extremely fragile, leading paleontologists to speculate that it feasted primarily on smaller fish and soft-tissued squid within deep waters. It might start looking like this was the worst place ever, solely for little critters, but don't relax too much, as the third most common mosasaur was a giant with an appetite to match, and this is the Tylosaurus. This mosasaur was in most ways the same as others of its kind, just everything about it was much bigger, with adults being anywhere from 12 to 15.8 meters, or 39 to 52 feet long, fairly similar to the length of a humpback whale, and making it one of the largest mosasaurs across the entire planet. And unlike the Platycarpus, Tylosaurus had teeth that were no joke, with matured individuals possessing up to 32 teeth at any given point, that were fairly similar to each other in nature, being large, thick, recurved, and finely serrated, perfectly adapted for tearing through large animals. And thanks to its size, Tylosaurus could pretty much bully anything it wanted to in its environment, playing the role of an apex predator and routinely hunted a wide range of animals, that is reflected by its stomach contents, as they have included the remains of plesiosaurs, turtles, birds, bony fish, sharks, and even other mosasaurs. The Tylosaurus is believed to have mostly utilized ambushes during these hunts, where it would strike unsuspecting prey at high speeds, and possibly deploying a secret weapon as well. Snout. This snout was quite unique to Tylosaurus, with it being proportionally very long and having all teeth situated farther back, meaning that the front was pure bone. The tip of the snout was also fitted with a robustly built knob that was backed by shock compression structures, leading to the belief that this snout was literally a built-in ram that Tylosaurus used to bash animals around. And evidence shows that Tylosaurus was quite liberal with the use of this weapon, being a hyper-aggressive animal that attacked nearly everything.
You just impulse something, run into it?
Adult specimens routinely bear damage thought to have come from other competitors. Even the rarer yet equally deadly Mosasaurus was sometimes attacked, with one fatal case even being known of, wherein a Tylosaurus had rammed and smashed the brain case of a Mosasaurus apart, leading to a swift death. Don't get
Okay.
it twisted though, as Mosasaurus still held the distinction of the largest mosasaur and therefore predator in these waters, occasionally growing to be 17.1 meters or 56 feet long
Man.
and weighing over 10 tons. And while
No,
it
thank
didn't
you.
have a battering ram like Tylosaurus did, Mosasaurus arguably had the deadlier bite, with its skull being relatively large for its body, allowing for a row of giant teeth that were made for slicing and dicing. Each tooth possessed two opposite cutting edges as well as prisms that ran down the sides, helping each bite to cut deeper while simultaneously improving the overall gripping strength. Its bite was also much more
Natural.
powerful,
Not
with
even
studies
once.
suggesting a bite force of between 13,000 and 16,000 pounds per square inch, which is 4 times the power of a saltwater croc's bite. With such power and size, Mosasaurus became another one of the western interior seaway's apex predators, having a diet just as diverse as the Tylosaurus.
He's not even biting them, he's just
But
swallowing
again,
them.
similar to its relative, it is thought to have employed ambush hunting to capture prey. Unlike sharks, these giants didn't rely on a keen sense of smell to target prey. Rather, they had powerful binocular vision that provided pristine views in the murkiest of waters. And unfortunately for all, Tylosaurus and Mosasaurus were not the only giants of their kind prowling around with great vision, as you also
Okay.
had mosasaurs like Prognathodon, which was only 25% smaller than the Mosasaurus and also had a ferocious bite.
Alright.
Remarkably, despite holding the title of the biggest predators, the Mosasaurs did not have the deadliest jaws in these waters, as that title went to a predator that coasted the most outer edges of the western interior seaway, the Deinosuchus. Yep,
More
that's
like a
right.
crocodile.
This prehistoric body of water not only had the largest mosasaurs of all time, but one of the largest crocodilians as well.
Damn.
Currently, scientists are not positive on the extent of the Deinosuchus's
It
presence
looks,
in the region.
at least from this representation, it looks so much more like, actual crocodile and alligators of today, right? Like, pretty insane. I guess this is one of the most dinosaur-like things that we still have. I know people say that about birds, right? A lot of birds, are very similar to how they used to be, right? And then maybe something like Komodo dragon. But I guess crocodile as well, clearly. I mean, this looks so close to what we expect, maybe smaller now, but yeah, that's insane. I mean, I'm sure someone will find one in Florida. You go to Florida, I'm sure you'll find some dinosaur there. Yeah.
But it's thought that it definitely inhabited bays, estuaries, and the coast, while perhaps venturing into deeper waters as well from time to time.
It really
since
looks so
specimens
much
have
like
been
now.
found in marine deposits.
That's crazy.
Furthermore, it definitely lived on both the eastern and western side of the seaway, and interestingly differed in size depending on which side it lived. To the east, Deinosuchus grew to smaller sizes but were far more plentiful, while in the west they were fewer but far
Oh, so
larger,
they sounded from
reaching
dinosaur,
12
yeah.
meters or 39 feet in length.
That's what I mean.
This obviously isn't very close to the length of the largest mosasaurs, though Deinosuchus was far more robust in build, allowing it to stand its ground when
They're
it came to
fighting over
weight,
it.
with estimates suggesting a maximum of around 8.5 tons.
Alright.
Disregarding weight, Deinosuchus had the advantage of more impregnable defenses, since, like many crocodilians,
Yeah.
it too was covered in osteoderms. However, Deinosuchus was a bit unique in that its osteoderms were much larger and heavier than normal. In fact, when they were first recovered, paleontologists
So crazy
confused
attack,
them
crazy
for
defense.
the armor of an Ankylosaurus.
Broken much.
These homegrown armored plates would have covered the back of adults and were hemispherical in shape,
Can go on
providing
land, can
ample
go no
armor
hotel.
while also serving as attachment points for tissue, which ultimately played a massive role in its ability to walk outside of water.
Yeah.
Overall, these osteoderms made Deinosuchus one of the better equipped animals in the waters, but what really made it stick out was its monstrous bite. For starters, Deinosuchus had massive skulls that were alligator-like in structure, meaning they were very broad, giving them immense biting power that was only amplified by the presence of well-developed jaw muscles. All of this resulted in a bite that potentially delivered more power than even that of a fully grown T-Rex, with
Okay.
some studies estimating a bite force of over 100,000 newtons, 5 times the power needed to crush a car.
Oh,
This
okay.
staggering amount of energy
Okay.
would have been channeled into their
I was gonna
robust
say because I don't really know what that really means, but I see.
teeth
Yeah,
that
bye.
were sharper towards the front and blunter towards the back, suggesting that this croc was designed to crush things to death rather than tear. It's thought that, like the American alligator, Deinosuchus was an opportunistic feeder who munched on anything it could catch. Yet fossil evidence shows that it had a preference for marine turtles, large fish, and dinosaurs that ventured too close to the water. The coasts and shallow reefs of this prehistoric seaway were no doubt a terrible place to be if trying to avoid the largest predators around. But the more open waters were home to their own share of nightmares too, including rather peculiar cephalopods to say the least.
A giant squid?
Cretaceous cephalopods like those of today were still found in shallow water,
I guess
but
it's
they
not
held a much
quite
more
a squid,
expansive
huh?
range in the deeper areas compared to others. Despite not being as big or as bad as the mosasaurs, or Deinosuchus for that matter, they still feasted on whatever was floating around, as western interior seaway cephalopods were among the biggest of their kind, even rivaling the size of living krakens today, like the colossal and giant squid. Two of the better known large cephalopods from those times were Tusoteuthis and Ankoteuthis, both members of the now extinct Ankoteuthinae family.
Okay.
These two sea monsters were incredibly similar. So much so, in fact,
But
that
it is much more like a
paleontologists
squid,
often like to
so
argue on if a
is it
recovered
fully
specimen
extinct?
belongs to one or the other. What we do know, though, is that they were big, frightening looking, and confusing. Confusing in the sense that they had the appearance of a girthy, relatively short squid, and yet were more related to modern octopus than living squids.
Oh.
In their youth, these cephalopods were quite small and vulnerable to attacks, with paleontologists believing that they actually made up the bulk of a lot of aquatic animals' diets,
Okay.
an idea backed by prehistoric fish stomach contents. However, in response to being fish food, these cephalopods adapted by maturing rapidly, and showing extreme size variation among individuals.
Okay, it's not as
leading
big
to
as I
some
thought.
specimens
but it's
being
still
about
too
the
big.
size of your arm, while others
That's what
could
she
get
said.
3 meters or 10 feet long.
I know.
At this size, these guys were active predators and turned the tables on their once would-be attackers, typically eating fish, invertebrates, and even vertebrates like baby mosasaurs and plesiosaurs. Akin to how octopus hunt, Tusoteuthis and Ankoteuthis would have used their 10 tentacles, lined with suckers, to ensnare prey which were then swiftly ushered into their waiting beaks. Additionally, while not confirmed, many think that they were also capable of squirting ink when a quick escape was necessary, and were quite speedy,
Really?
relying upon jet propulsion to maneuver the waters. Obviously, these cephalopods had some useful tools, yet one area that they were lacking in was armor, as their bodies were for the most part composed of very soft tissue. Although there was another cephalopod
very
lurking
squishy
around
indeed.
that had an answer to this problem. This was Parapazosia. Despite hailing from the same class of animals, Parapazosia was not an octopoda like the two formerly mentioned creatures, but instead a member of the Ammonite order, a now extinct
Okay.
group of cephalopods whose closest living relatives
So
are the
many crazy
coleoids.
names. Huh?
All members of this order, Parapazosia included, bore
the
spiral
one on
shells.
the-
All members of
The one on the right, the Polyptychocelas, looks like it has a chainsaw. That looks really awesome. Man, all those names. Maybe I would know all those names because, as I said before, like when I was super young, I was really into dinosaur stuff. And I was saying I used to say like I would be a paleontologist. So maybe if I went that route, I would know a lot more about dinosaur. But it was only really like a big interest when I was young. There used to be this TV show. It was like a fake documentary show with like probably by now pretty ugly 3D. But it would be this guy would like would fake go through like a portal and go back in time to the era of the dinosaur, and he would like explain the dinosaurs. I don't remember what it was called, but it was really fun. TV show dinosaur guys goes back in time. I totally forget the name. Subnautica? Prehistoric Park. Was that it? Oh, I think that was the one. I think that was what I'm talking about, yeah. This was probably the show, Prehistoric Park. I think that was the show I used to watch when I was young, and I was really, really, really into it. I guess from 2006, so I was probably like 8 or 9 when I saw it. Wait, no, Prehistoric Park. Prehistoric Park. That is the show. That is the show. Yeah. I used to really, really like that show. Like again, it was pretty interesting how it was just this guy going back in time and just documenting the dinosaur. I liked it a lot. Look like they're from Subnautica. Fontaine Waters looks so kind in comparison, yeah, definitely.
this order, Parapazosia included, bore spiral shells which were made of calcium carbonate, the same mineral seen in snail shells. Analysis on the shells showed that the calcium carbonate was arranged in prisms, crystals, or other shapes and patterns depending on the layer. These shells provided a fair degree of protection against predators, and also housed the majority of their bodies, which in the case of Parapazosia was
insane.
a lot, since it was a true sea monster, holding the title of the largest known ammonite and the heaviest cephalopod of all time. outclassing both the giant
I believe
and
you.
colossal squid. The largest known Parapazosia had shells that were possibly 3.5 meters or 11 feet in diameter, meaning
Hell
that with
no.
flesh, these individuals are probably over 1.5 tons in weight, of which nearly half came from the
ton.
shell alone. And if you could somehow pry a shell off of one of these giants, it's thought that their body would uncurl to a total length of 60 feet or 18 meters, about
Damn.
twice the length of a whale shark. Such size gave Parapazosia one more accolade, the heaviest invertebrate of all time. But what it did with this size is unknown, as all members of its order and their closer relatives are extinct, rendering their daily lives a mystery. What we do know, though, is that individuals could be found throughout the entire western
It
interior
really looks
seaway,
crazy. I mean,
and
this one
tended to
is
stick to the upper layer of water,
something.
typically not going below 250 meters or 800 feet, meaning that unlike giant squids of today, these behemoths weren't hard to find. And finding it may not have been in your best interest either, as it could have been adept at catching fish, other cephalopods, and even marine reptiles. However, on the flip side, some think it was actually more likely to give you a death through jump scare than predation, with some arguing that it mostly stuck to vegetation and plankton, only hunting the slowest of creatures due to its sluggishness.
Yeah.
It's quite shocking that this giant bizarre invertebrate could be found in an area that also housed the largest mosasaur and one of the largest crocodilians of all time,
We might also eat
making
it.
the western
Sure.
interior seaway seem like something out of a monster movie.
Le
And at the
Parc.
very same time, there were horrors swimming around that we are all too familiar with,
Sharks?
including sharks. They may not have been the true kings of the time, but they were still highly successful, playing the role of both scavengers and active predators, while also being one of the most commonly found carnivores around. Like many, these Cretaceous sharks apparently had a touch of gigantism, as a few
course.
types found in the seaway were among the largest known sharks. Although, in contrast to say Deinosuchus, size didn't necessarily mean the sharks made the waters deadlier, since the biggest of them all, the Tychodus, was actually relatively harmless to most. This was a
So it's
mackerel
not
shark
called the
the size of a
Megalodon.
whale shark,
I'm sad.
but unlike the whale shark,
was
it
lied
didn't
to.
use filter feeding, but yet was still highly specialized in its own regard, sporting a durophagous diet, meaning it primarily
Is
ate
it
anything
opening
with
in
a
its-
shell or
Oh, it's
exoskeleton.
the... Okay, I'm done.
This odd diet was deduced by the shark's teeth, which weren't sharp or serrated, but were
Yes, yeah, there's
instead
an opening,
fairly
yeah.
flat plates that were designed to crush. These teeth were abundant, sometimes numbering over
That's weird.
500, and could be absolutely huge, with the
Okay.
biggest recorded being longer than a ruler. These robust teeth would have allowed the shark to easily crush a variety of slow, hard-moving prey like crustaceans
So not
or
biting,
turtles.
but crushing.
Not all sharks are this docile, though, as when you do go down in size, you run into a still fairly big, yet much more voracious, toothy fish, the Cretoxyrhina, more commonly known as the Ginsu shark. Like
Ginsu shark.
Tychodus, this was a mackerel shark, but this one bore a striking resemblance to our very own great white, while also sharing an oddly similar lifestyle, even though the two were not closely related, demonstrating a case of convergent evolution millions of years in the making. This was obviously terrible news for any animal around, since it meant that the Cretoxyrhina would have taken a stab at any kind of prey if the size was right. But it gets even scarier, because this shark was particularly good at killing a certain kind of animal, active predators. That's right, the bulk of the Cretoxyrhina's
do?
diet came from other megafaunal marine predators,
I don't.
such as sharks, mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and fish, all of which have been
Like something like an hammer shark, I can agree, isn't terrifying. Like I can see that's cute, but like, you know, great white and a lot of other type, they look scary. Yeah, but then there's an hammer shark, which are fine.
found in the stomach regions
They're
of
fine.
certain specimens. Such a diet indicates a hyper-aggressive animal and brings up the question of how it achieved such a feat. Well, the secret lay in its size and locomotion, as despite sometimes being 8 meters or 26 feet long
meters.
and weighing over 5 tons, it was still ridiculously fast, evidenced by
of
the
course.
pattern of its placoid scales, which reduced drag and were organized in a fashion only seen in the fastest living sharks. Additionally, Cretoxyrhina had the most extreme case of a type 4 tail fin seen in any mackerel shark. Big news, as this type of fin supports high speeds, and models estimate that this giant could have topped speeds of 70 kilometers or 43 miles per hour,
70
where its
kilometers.
powerful jaws would have then come into play, dealing catastrophic
You're not
damage,
running.
as they were lined with rows of razor-sharp teeth, which were bigger than those even seen in great whites, and also had thicker coats of enamel in order to survive these massive collisions. Fossil remains support thicker coats of
27 millimeter. 27 millimeter.
enamel in order to survive these massive collisions. Fossil remains support the notion of high-speed attacks too, as nearly all bones found with bite marks belonging to this shark are extremely deep and large. And some of these said fossils have actually come from dinosaurs, showcasing that not even the rulers of the Mesozoic were safe. Albeit the dinosaurs in question, which were a hadrosaur and ankylosaur, were likely scavenged after their corpse had been washed out to sea.
I was gonna say, like, what
Yes, the
did they went to
Cratoxyrhina
take a
is still
swim?
more than enough shark to fill anyone's galeophobia. But the fin nightmares didn't stop with it, as you can't forget the presence of a smaller shark that still managed to make the waters even more quote-unquote interesting, the Squalicorax,
Well, name
better
it.
known by its nickname, the crow shark. It too is a mackerel shark.
Megalodon.
However, it was
Is there
quite a
no
bit smaller,
Megalodon?
normally measuring between 1.8 meters or 5.9 feet and 4.8 meters or 16 feet in length,
That's more realistic.
similar to the size of a tiger shark.
Oh,
And its
realistic.
likeness to the tiger of the ocean went beyond its size, as its teeth were remarkably similar too, being numerous, relatively small, curved, and serrated. Perfect for cutting and sawing through tough tissue. With such deadly teeth, the crow shark was capable of devouring many kinds of food that largely overlapped with the diet of the Cratoxyrhina, with the major difference being that it went for the smaller individuals.
Okay.
Another difference between the two was that the crow shark tended to stick to more coastal
Isn't around
areas
yet?
and
Oh,
supplemented a larger
okay.
portion of its calorie intake with scavenging, which again partially consisted of dinosaurs. It also developed a unique skill, hunting the rulers of the sky. In other words, the
Oh.
pterosaurs.
Jumping out.
Since, as opposed to other sharks, the
20
crow
million
shark has
years.
been known
Okay.
on more than one occasion
I see.
to have
I
successfully
forget how
attacked
broad
large
the
pterosaurs,
head of the dinosaur
namely
was.
the pteranodon,
I forget.
which suggests that it had excellent vision that it used to track pterosaurs when they were getting ready to dive for a fish.
Oh, they dive,
And
okay.
speaking of fish, crow sharks are pretty good at hunting them too, with many specimens containing large amounts of fish within their stomachs. Among the fish that have been found, there is one that has really stuck out to paleontologists, since it too is well known for being a famous sea monster of the Western Interior Seaway,
Okay.
Ziphactinus.
Whoa.
You may recognize this name from certain documentaries, or you might be more familiar with its colloquial name, the X-fish. It was a large bony
Nope.
fish that belonged to the now extinct order known as the Ichthyodectiforms,
Oh my god, these
who were
names.
specifically comprised of ray-finned fish and were some of the meanest, ugliest fish to ever arise, with the X-fish being no exception.
I mean, it looks bad, but again, I've seen like picture of like anglerfish and viperfish and stuff like that from like the depths. They look even worse than this.
And probably holding the title as the meanest looking of the bunch. The main feature behind its terrifying looks was clearly its mug, which was broad, pushed back, and slanted.
Yeah.
And while this face X'd
Yeah,
any
okay, it's
chance
pretty
for a
bad.
career in modeling,
It's pretty bad.
it's what gave the X-fish
take that
its
back.
fearsome
It's pretty bad.
reputation and status as a top predator, as the jaw was highly flexible, allowing it to virtually swallow anything small enough, which meant a lot considering that adults could grow to be 5 to 6
definitely
meters,
swallowed
or
me.
16 to 20 feet in length. At the lower size estimate, X-fish were capable of swallowing human-sized prey with
Yeah.
one gulp, as depicted by the fish within a fish specimen, which showed a 1.9 meter or 6.2 foot long fish that had been swallowed whole by a medium-sized X-fish.
Well done.
Furthermore, there are over a dozen other specimens that show similar findings. And on top of this crazy ability, this fish could still also cut through things with ease, thanks to their narrowed and sharp teeth,
Yeah.
allowing them to both
It seems pretty
scavenge
good at what
large
it does.
animals or cut up living ones that could then be swallowed in smaller pieces. This was definitely the last non-shark fish you'd want to meet. And with the X-fish, you'd also start to arrive at the end of the list of sea monsters that truly made this place Hell's Aquarium. Naturally though, there were plenty of other piscivores and carnivores
I'm sure.
that I didn't mention, yet most didn't really make the seaway stand out in terms of deadliness. However, you really can't forget that there was one more iconic group present,
No.
the plesiosaurs. These
I've heard
guys,
that name.
like the mosasaurs, had 4 flippers, but the similarities stopped here, as plesiosaurs had broad flat bodies and
Isn't
short
that like the, the Loch Ness monster? Like, it was said if it was anything, it would be like a Plesiosaurus. I think that's what it is.
weak tails, while their
Yeah.
necks could also be comically long, giving certain members the longest neck-to-body ratio of any reptile.
They didn't skip
To
neck
swim,
day.
they would have flapped their flippers in a flying motion and mostly stuck to the shallower waters.
Yeah.
So far, multiple kinds are known to have inhabited the Western Interior Seaway, with the bulk being plesiosauroids, while a few species of polycotylids were present too. Some of them could get quite long and were typically over 15 feet or 5 meters from head to tail, with the longest having been the
And having such a long
Elasmosaurus
neck,
and
like,
Albertonectes,
is that really useful?
both of whom grew to around 11.6 meters or 38 feet.
People already say that about
Such
giraffe,
length
but look at
gave them
this.
the longest necks of all time, and the Elasmosaurus
Yeah.
actually had the most vertebrae of any known animal. Quite the accomplishment. But despite their daunting lengths and appearances, these long-necked reptiles didn't really have voracious diets, as they were simply highly
Also, like,
special.
what a weakness. Like, if they fight any other predator, all you need to do is attack the neck, which seems, I mean, maybe it's strong, I don't know, but it seems like such a simple weak point. Just cut off the head and the neck.
Specialized for small prey, given the narrow nature of their mouths and necks. It is believed that they would have used their necks to actually trick small animals like fish by approaching them with their mouths while their large bodies were hidden out of sight, and thus giving them the chance to ambush prey. Perhaps even confusing a fish into thinking that they were a fish too.
Okay.
Once they struck, though, it was clear that they were no friendly fish, as like many specialized fishers, the plesiosauroids had teeth that were angled in such a
teeth
way
looks fucked
that they
up.
created a natural fish trap once closed. In addition to fish, it is believed that they also hunted snails, clams, and other small creatures. So,
Okay.
while not apex predators, these guys were no doubt still highly skilled and successful, as
And it looks
demonstrated by
scary.
their extreme level of diversity. Which brings up the question of where did they and the rest of the crazy animals that called these waters home go? Well, some seem to have had a slow decline, or in other cases, evolved into something else. Animals also had to deal with the fact that the seaway was constantly shrinking.
Yeah.
Although, what really changed the seaway for good was the asteroid that slammed
Yeah,
into Earth
I was gonna say.
66 million years ago, causing extreme disruption and damage to say the least. The impact was especially bad here compared to other bodies of waters, considering that the giant rock touched down rather close, sending a giant tsunami, as well as other unpleasantries through the waters, as evidenced by
Imagine just a fish is suddenly like you're riding a tsunami. I mean, you're probably gonna die, but you're the last fucking dinosaur riding a tsunami. You're at the top of it. You're seeing the world from the top of your tsunami. Ain't a bad way to go. Ain't a bad way to go.
fish found with iridium in their gills. This devastation wiped out many of the more iconic sea monsters, and finally brought an end to Hell's Aquarium.
I don't know if I should feel sad.
Don't be
I mean,
mistaken though, as the waters have been home to many nightmarish creatures after the end of the Western Interior Seaway,
sure.
including relatively recently, when a species of dolphin emerged in North America that had literal spears for teeth. And if that sounds interesting, check out the video I made on that.
Okay. I don't know. It sounds very scary. Didn't see it. They might still be here today, yeah. And we wouldn't be here today, probably. Like, obviously, the asteroid really changed the course of Earth quite a bit. Quite a bit. Man, okay. Okay. Yeah. Very interesting video. I did actually play Subnautica, so a lot of this reminds me of Subnautica. It's a game that I never want to play again. It's like, I generally have thalassophobia, I think, and Subnautica was like a very hard experience to play. So yeah, pretty interesting. I didn't know about most of those, and I'm really surprised. Like the biggest thing that surprised me is like sharks and gators or crocodile. I guess they haven't. Well, I wouldn't say they haven't evolved that much. They might have, mainly shrinking in size. But I'm surprised they looked so similar to how they look now, despite being like millions and millions of years ago. That is insane to me. That sharks and like gator are like so similar to what they used to be, just a smaller version. Yeah, I didn't expect that, but okay. Nope. My very insightful comment. Alright, madness. Seriously. I mean, yeah, like, I still like dinosaurs, but I guess I like land dinosaurs a lot more. Even though, they're still like terrifying in some way, like even a T-Rex, which everybody thinks is cool to an extent, is still terrifying, right? Like it's big, it's got scary teeth, a scary face, a scary look. I think raptors are cool, but in comparison to stuff like this, yeah. And I think again, like automatically water is more scary. Like especially as a human being, like we all recognize the simple fact that, even if you can swim, water is scary. It's, like, you can't move as smoothly as you would want, you can't move as freely as you would want. If you lose strength or anything, you're drowning. And then the ocean, especially like the ocean or the sea, you have no idea what's under you. It's, it's super deep. There might be monsters and things like that. Like, yeah, it's, I guess it's a rational human fear. So like, yeah, looking at these things from back then makes you, kind of like reflect and think that, even though sharks are kind of scary in some way, killer whales or orca or that kind of stuff, maybe not that bad. I would still not want to ever go into the Ocean or the sea. But yeah, I guess in the end, like, you know, when you look at it, Earth evolved in a way to be friendlier to us in some way. Yeah, even if you look at like crocodile or shark, you know, they got smaller, you know, everything got smaller, I guess, like everything got smaller, yeah. It's kind of the history of the Earth, it seems like. And while they're still scary, you know, it's more relatively okay, I guess. Yeah, that's my thoughts on this. That's my thoughts on this. Yeah. But man, I remember this show. I guess there was only one season, seems like, from what I'm seeing people posting. But yeah, this show was a lot of fun. Prehistoric Park. I used to watch that. I think I won't say we had it on VHS, but they say it's a show from 2006. But I guess at that point, yeah, we were still using like cassette tape to record TV stuff. And I believe I had this show on cassette tape or something. And I used to really like it. It was a pretty unique show. Yeah, Prehistoric Park. I might rewatch an episode or something. Just for the nostalgia. That would be cool. That would be cool. Okay, well, there's still a lot of video from you guys, but, you know, it's already been a good 4-hour stream. I feel like I watched enough stuff, so I guess we'll leave it at that for today. Sorry if I don't get to your video. As always, I do as many videos as I can, right? And, you know, don't get discouraged, right? Like, you can always come next time, and maybe I'll choose your video next time. Don't hesitate. You know, I mean, some of them sounds interesting, right? Like stuff about the Capitol, or, you know, this or this or this. So yeah, if you just want to like tell me again next time, I might check it out next time. I'll try to do the stream once a week. It is very fun. And again, you know, if between stream you see like any video you think I might be interested in, you can just save it and, you know, try to propose it next stream. As I said, you don't have to suggest just one video. Like even mini video is fine, definitely. See you in a week. Thank you for coming. But yeah, that's quite interesting, and